get on our feet and put our hands together for my friend and my brother, Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. We forever give thanks and praise to Almighty God, Allah, for coming in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, to whom praise is due forever, for raising up in our midst a divine leader, a divine teacher, and a divine guide, in the person of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I thank the two of them for the man who is largely responsible for my spiritual rites of passage, who has been my teacher and mentor, the man who is my spiritual father. I speak of none other than Minister Louis Farrakhan. In their names, I greet you, my brothers and sisters, here at the United African Movement family meeting with the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. Hotep. Free the land. Black laws for all black people and black power. It's my honor to have these few moments. I will come back and speak soon. I'm sure this is home for me. But we're here tonight. We're here tonight to hear from Brother Steve Coakley. Certainly I want to come soon and make a report from the Million Youth March. To have a question and answer session so that questions can be asked and by God's grace answered. Today we were at City Hall. I thought since there were so many calls for me to be arrested on site that I would go straight to Giuliani's door. So I went straight to his door today. We were there with our brothers and sisters from Mart 125. For as you know, as they have put the black African vendors off of 125th Street, they now want to go into Mart 125 and kick our brothers and sisters out of Mart 125 and tear it down and let some Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Disneyland, blockbuster Peckerwood move onto 125th Street. So there has been a stay in that process. The brothers and sisters, I was very proud of them today from Mart 125. They went before the Dispositions and Concession Hearing Committee, and members of the New York City City Council. Oh, no good. Bill Punk Perkins was there, and some of the others. But a stay today. And now another opportunity for them to rally their forces, for us to rally our forces behind Mart 125. But since they had asked me to come to City Hall, there across from so-called Police Commissioner Safer, and there at the office and headquarters of old no good Rudolph Giuliani, I thought it was an opportunity not only to go at their request to support them, but to just take it straight to the cracker at City Hall. You know you don't enter City Hall without going through police checkpoints, barricades at certain points, and we went past the police car. When I got there, Sister Viola Plummer was there, and I was happy to see her. she was talking to some devil in a police car about where the actual hearing would be held. So I went in by the power of God by myself to let the devil know that no power, no force, no combination of powers nor forces should we, the black man and black woman, bow down to. We bow down to the God of our ancestors and God alone. And I wanted you to know that I'm not in some damn basement, as I saw in the Village Voice, with a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling in a corner, some old ugly sketch of somebody. It certainly wasn't me. But you know, when Peter Noel writes the way he writes and gives the information, because I thought he did a good job in writing the piece. He said what happened on the stage to some degree. He said what happened behind the stage to some degree after the police attacked. Many times the writer writes, but then the publisher or the editor decides on what photograph or what picture or what artwork is going to go, or graphic is going to go with the story. So it appeared that they felt that the story of Peter Noel was too positive, too flattering, so they had to put some old half-looking black man, looked like he's about 90 years old, sitting in a corner with this single light bulb hanging and a big shadow on the wall of a cracker policeman with his billy club over the head of whoever the hell this was, giving the impression that I'm somewhere in a basement hiding from the Peckerwood. I don't hide from Peckerwoods. So I decided to come on back. You know, we had over 78 cities where we had the Black Power Organizing Committee set up. And we promised them that though they could not make it to New York, that after mass mobilization in New York, we would then have mass organization around the country. And so we started on some of those cities, and we will have follow-up here in the city of New York, where the Million Youth March was hosted and convened. But I just wanted to share those few things with you. The man that we are about to hear from here tonight has worked in city government in Chicago, has worked at the side of Mayor Harold Washington, worked at the side of the interim mayor after Mayor Harold Washington, who we believe the devils are responsible for murdering, that our brother did not die a natural death. And now the old no-good cracker Daley is in position. His father had a dynasty, a Daley dynasty, with the machine bosses and organized crime and the criminal enterprise of Chicago and the state and much of the country behind him. And now the old no-good son, following in the old no-good footsteps of his own no-good father, is over the city. But this man that you will hear from here tonight, Brother Steve Coakley, has worked in city government, aiding black mayors in predominantly black administrations, working on behalf of our people. He has exposed the Trilateral Commission, exposed the Bilderbergers, exposed the skull and crossbone, exposed the conspiracies that exist working above board and above ground and underground and behind the scenes, the hidden hand. He has exposed the New World Order. He has pulled the cover off of many crackers who give a certain impression out front. But when you really pull the cover off of them, you see them to be the beast. You see them to be the devils that they really are. He has pulled the cover off of Negroes. Boule, boot-licking, butt-licking, butt-dancing, Uncle Tom Negroes, that we could see them for what they are. He's the man that we know to be the one who's naming the names. What does he do? He calls them out. He names the names. Check. Is that right? Check. Does he name the names? He names the names. So let's bring on the man who names the names, the foremost researcher among us, and the foremost scholar in the area of research that gives many of us who come before you the ammunition that we use to fight this devil, to fight this beast. Please, on your feet with the United African Movement, welcome for Brother Steve Coakley. Black power! 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 Come on, you can do better than that. Black power! Black power, Brother Steve Coakley.
All right. Thanks, Brother Monk. Brother Monk, you really run everything. Hotep, I appreciate you, the United African Movement, Sister Karen Mason and family, Brother Alden Maddox, Minister Brown, and all of you faceless, nameless soldiers who tirelessly give of yourself. I know it ain't no pay, but everybody works very hard on behalf of African people. I appreciate my brother, Brother Khalid Muhammad. Can't hear me? You hear me better now? All right. I remember to lean into the microphone. Uh-oh. Got me? Okay, there we go. A little better like that? That's all right? Thank you, brother. I appreciate having the opportunity to be with you. I appreciate the introduction from Sister Camille Yarborough. And Sister Camille, I know you're around here somewhere. And I most humbly appreciate our dear brother, Brother Khalid Muhammad, for all of the sacrifices and the pain and the pressure that'll be thrusted upon his shoulder, not only in the past, but also for the future. And I appreciate each and every one of you. Many of you I saw on 9/5/98. And I really want to spend some time with you talking about that. We're going to talk a little bit more about the oath takers, some deep oath takers, some things about that we would all want to know. We'll talk a little bit about the new book out, Head to the Top, by Monica Lewinsky. We'll talk a little bit about the plot to destroy education. We'll talk a little bit about the Forbes 400, which is out now. You need to look at the New York members of the new Forbes 400 richest people in America list. You need 500 million just to make the list. There are no black people on the list, but there's plenty New York people on the list. Now, to start this off, you know, in most cases, when we start off a program, we pour a libation. Check? Well, we decided that libation is one side of the scale. We needed the other side of the scale called retaliation. We pour on that. Check? So you know, when you pour libation, you say a hero's name, what do you holler out? Ashe. There we go. I mean, you say Ashe. All right. Then, they be messing up for African people. We have another phrase, the other side of the angle. It's called touche. Touche. Check? Let me hear you say touche. All right. See, it say something like Clarence Thomas. All right? Calvin Butts. Bill Perkins. Percy Sutton. Charlie Rangel. Virginia Fields. Jesse Jackson. Floyd Flake. Colin Powell. David Dinkins. Who's that, Patterson? Yeah, David Patterson. Armstrong Williams. Julian Bond. Vernon Jordan. Roy Ennis. And his son. And his son. Shit, the whole family. All innocents. Michael Myers. We're gonna come to the white touches in a minute. Who else? Percy Sutton. We think we got him already. Clarence Thomas. I think we started with him. Who? So Oprah Winfrey. Ward Connolly. O.J. Simpson. Who? Marcello Wooten. Wooten. Priscilla Wooten. Who's that? She's nothing. Well, the whole country gonna hear this, so what's important, oh, here we go, we coming in. What's important about the process is that these tapes are excessively influential. They will run all over the country. So when you're toucheing, recognize the fact that other Africans have to be educated to names that you may holler that they might not know. So that's why I stopped to figure out. All right, touche. Who else? Maxine Waters. The whole Black Caucus. Yeah. Who else? Carol, I see in the Black Caucus, right? All of them. Because they all, the NAACP, all of it, huh? What about Kwesi and Fume? Okay, what's up, bro? Who else? How about tried to get his ass on the stage, Cornel West? Oh, y'all sound a little indecisive. Hold it now, Cornel West. Who? Benjamin Chavis. Bob Law. Don't forget Dick Parsons up there at Time Warner, too. Who? Tony Brown. Who else? Chris Rock. Who else? How about we did Dinkins. How about Pfeiffer? Oh, the movie Desmond Pfeiffer. Hey, what about this movie Denzel Washington in demonizing the people of other persuasions in our community? Coming up about martial law in New York, Siege. We have to touche on the movie Siege. Chris Rock, we got Chris Rock. Okay, hold it now. How about ancestral touche? W.B. Du Bois. Ralph Bunch. What's that Negro? Roy Wilkins. Who? Thurgood Marshall was an informant for the FBI against Martin King. Touche. Who? Ralph Abernathy. Roy Wilkins. Boy, y'all must be hard of hearing. Andrew Jackson. Who is that? See, I talk to y'all long enough, it gets scary. Right? You got too many $20 bills. That's Andrew Young you was trying to say, huh? Okay. Who? Who is Robert Q. Martin? Oh, Morton, yeah, R. Moulton, yeah. He was an informant during the old days. Calvin Butts, yeah, he's a repeat. We got him. He deserves it twice for being full of double talk. Okay, now get at some thought. E.R. Ship of the New York Times, at least used to be. Huh? Oh, yeah, Stanley Crouch. Yeah, Huh, Peter Noel that bad? Peter Noel? Touche. Let's say touche. I take my advice from Sister Carol. Peter Noel, touche. Touche it is. Yeah. Travis Smiley, yes, sir. Touche. Larry Elder. He's another one of them black conservatives. Who? Ken Hamlet. Oh, yeah, the guy, from Denver, yeah. Okay. Keep in your mind the process of retaliation. You must keep that in your mind. Without the element of retaliation, we stand defenseless. What is probably most important about the manifestation of what we saw here in New York around the time of the Million Youth March, the period before it, and even the period after it, is the emergence of an element from which the hunky and most Negroes never wanted to see. Never have the moderates who, due to assassination and attrition, have moved to the forefront of the African community. Never have the moderates wanted to see a militant faction of our community manifest in the public that would jeopardize the money they get for controlling the Negro population. Controlling the Negro population is more important to African leadership than leading African people against a historic enemy that knows no compromise. There is a crisis in black leadership today. They are stuck in the dilemma of moderation or liberation. Malcolm X truly brought the dilemma to the public. It was the ballot of the bullet. Liberation or continuation. No one wants it that clear. No one likes to be either or. That's why we had the phrase, have a little, want some more. To be a little bit of this and a little bit of that can confuse the people enough that you go nowhere. That's where we came up with this phrase. That I've never really been to a meeting when asked about the Council on Foreign Relations, but I spoke at some of them. Jesse Jackson, you remember that double-cross language. But this emergence of a militant faction of African people is excessively important. For if it does not emerge and organize and manifest soon, African people will be sacrificed, slaughtered. I wouldn't doubt, Brother Khaled, that somewhere on those rooftops on Malcolm X Boulevard there were not policemen with sniper weapons. I want to tell you today that in the midst of the confusion, I'm going to tell you because if you're going to sue them, I want you to ask for this paperwork. Ask for the contingency plan that suggested that Giuliani, on behalf of the National Security Council, would supervise the shooting of the leadership of the Million Youth March in case of civil disturbance. Ask for the paperwork. I also want you to know that when those trains were cut off in Harlem, do you know what was down inside of those trains? They had set up mass incarceration systems where we would have been held in the subways for detainment and shipped on the trains to the police department. That was the plan. The trains were going to be used to ship the people. It was really Nazi Germany set up in reverse. And I don't want you to underestimate the fact that that organized confusion by Giuliani was surely had as his whole card assassination as a tool of protecting the vital interests of the U.S. government. Now, initially, I remember on July 9th, when there was a press conference at Sylvia's, and the question was raised Giuliani and that little homosexual looking police chief Because, see, I really do think they got a Gay Edgar Hoover thing going up in there. Don't underestimate the Gay Edgar Hoover thing when you pathologically sick. Anytime Koch can come out and strike against you, you know something tutti frutti going on in there. But I suspect that on July 9th, when they went to Giuliani and to the police chief to ask him about this Million Youth March, they were very muted in their response. They didn't quickly respond, we're going to stop it. They didn't get real fast and arrogant in the public. Up until that moment, it was the whole card of white America to act like the march wouldn't exist, while the other team got built up and promoted and published in the public. See, the only way the CIA works is that before the CIA would burn a village in Vietnam, before they would burn this village, they would build a library over here. You build a library over here, and while you're having your grand opening, you assassinate or destroy what the people really want over here. You don't destroy something until you have something exalted in its place. And I suggest to you in those early moments, around early part of July, the word was to Giuliani from the highest rings of the U.S. government, do not provoke the African people in New York. Wait until we get our ducks in position. And then the other side began to materialize. Nation of Islam, NAACP, Push Rainbow Coalition, SCLC, National Council of Negro Women. This looks like a formidable cadre of opposition. Even though we know some of them really don't want to mean that they're our opposition, sometimes they just get caught with our opposition. It's still a crime, nevertheless. All of a sudden, their strategy changed when they thought that the other side had in place the alternative solution. Giuliani and the police chief began to change their character. They got ugly and woolly in the public and began to say it wasn't going to be no march. Even began, I remember seeing a clip of Giuliani say, I'm going to arrest anybody on Malcolm X Boulevard after 401. Like, we live here, hunky, get out of here. What are you talking about? But you don't move into the attack position until you believe that your alternative has been established. This is an old CIA dog trick. You don't kill a leader. You don't kill Martin King. Last time we were here, we talked about how Jesse Jackson was strategically put in position to replace Martin King. You don't kill Martin King till Jesse Jackson's in place. You don't kill someone until your replacement is in place. So when the word came down, it was okay for Giuliani and them to go ahead and get woolly in the public. But in fact, what Khaled has a good strategy at being able to do. I witnessed this happen at Crampton Auditorium when they had the first Black Holocaust meeting with Leonard Jeffries and Brother Khaled and Malik Zulu Shabazz and Tony Martin and others. Khaled and Malik went to the Holocaust Museum that day and sucked the hunkies out. Made them stand in front of the Holocaust Museum and harass the Holocaust as being a neophyte in the face of the African slaughter. Well, by 4 o'clock news, the 4:30 news, the 5 o'clock news, the 5:30 news, the 6 o'clock news, all relayed the fact that Khalid Muhammad was going to be at the Crampton Auditorium that night, and the place was jam-packed. In fact, we've been banned in that room ever since. Now, Minister Farrakhan will be speaking there Friday night. And we were called the anti-Semitic Dream Team, usually condemned for being associated with him. And now he's in the room that we still can't go in. It's not anything against him. He didn't do it. The point is that people want to set something up like that, but that's incumbent upon the individuals to make sure they don't walk in the room unless everyone else can walk in it. You don't take a room and leave the others out. There were meetings in Chicago to decide how to handle the emergence of the militant faction. Words were passed, some of which were through Bob Brown. Y'all know Bob Brown. Y'all can ask him if I'm telling the truth. If he was told by someone in Chicago that they don't want to see Khalid Muhammad influence African youth into the 21st century. No black person think like that. Only the U.S. government think like that. Only Chase Manhattan Bank and Bank and Trust and Solomon Smith Barney, only they could think like that. Couldn't no sound thinking black person, especially people who we work with, think like that on their own, unless things have changed. I honestly believe that the emergence of this faction that we witnessed emerge in September. In fact, the black paper in D.C. said, Khalid Muhammad emerges to power. One white guy, I saw this and I saw it in one editorial. A white guy named Battle, I believe, he was in the Village Voice, he writes. He was on a New York One interview with the brother man Dominique. And in this interview, he asked the other whites, Peter Noel was sitting there and some little white, black homosexual writer for the Daily News. He was just, that Khalid Muhammad, now he was just too tough up there in Harlem. What's his name? What's his boy's name? Come on now, we got Touche on his ass. Oh, look, oh man, I got his picture. We'll see his picture. I'll show his face. Oh, he was just, that Khalid Muhammad, he was just, took my breath away. He was just, he was all aghast and shit. But the white boy Battle, he turned to the other white homosexual. There's two homosexuals, one white, one black. He turned to the white homosexual. And he said, I want to ask you one question. And I want you to tell the truth. Did the people applaud for Khalid Muhammad? So the guy said, well, you know, there were many people there, at least 6,000, and we're going to get into the 6,000 factor. One shot showed 7 blocks full of people. It said 6,000 people showed up today. Boy, I like to fell out of my chair. But that's all right. That's government work. Just watch who black repeats that. That's what's important to us. Okay. So the little white homosexual writer for one of these papers up here, he goes, yeah, they were out there. I mean, it was a great day. He said, I would just tell me emphatically that the people cheer for Khalid Muhammad. He said, yes, I guess we could say, I guess we could say they cheered for him. He said, now see, this is where we're misplaying this thing. See, you all are into who said what, and you into what Giuliani did, and what Giuliani did was truly bad. And it's important, and I thank you for that, Khalid, to have the power to make whites fight other whites. That's very important when you're trying to get away with something, to keep the whites fighting other whites. Okay. That's two, 3 strikes and you out. Okay. But to have drawn that out of the whites was very important. But Battle said, and I believe this is his name, you'll see his face, little bald-headed white boy, older fella. He said, you see, that's where you're making a mistake. What scares me most is that those people cheered wildly for Khalid Muhammad, and it appears as if something is going on in the black community. Then you got another news clip with the head of the American Jewish Congress. He said, well, what we really need to do is go out there and talk to them followers of Khalid Muhammad. Because obviously there are people out there who will support this. There is where we must work now. We must work on those. We're not going to convert no Khalid Muhammad or no Malik Zulu Shabazz or no Leonard Jeffries, but let's go work on the followers. In fact, soon you'll see Hunky is going to be walking in Harlem just passing money out and shit. Yeah, if you just... That's the man when Jane Byrne was passing them hams out in Chicago trying to beat Harold Washington. He was just taking the hams and throwing them down and say, Harold, Harold. But the bottom line is that only a few of the whites have really tried to deal with what really went on. The rest of the whites are suspended in a pathological sickness that makes them believe that the niggas they put out front is in control. And that's all right. That's not bad. That 3/4 of the hunky are pathologically suffering from the thought that everything's still under control. That's important. We can leave them all pumped up with that sort of thinking. That's okay. But that other 25% of the hunky we have to keep our eye on, who might understand that things are changing in the African community. Have the stained glass windows of our leadership and their houses gotten so big they can't see the people suffering outside? Have the leadership come not to know how bad it is our people are suffering, that all this gimmickry in the public about the vitality of the economy, why they're crushing our very vendors? They're crushing our vendors, and they call them about the great vital economy. This American government is about to suffer a financial catastrophe. The G7, the IMF, the World Bank just met in New York, in Washington. And they couldn't help but stumble over themselves to admit that they're in a very deep financial crisis, and community instability causes the markets to shake. When you got tight finances, you need absolute control over the people. But when the people have a vessel for militancy, now you throw the financial market into a wind of change. Giuliani did one thing very effectively. For most of the Africans that were in New York, he deflected the attention and the focus on power to he himself, a mere guard dog, a dog-ass animal protecting the Rockefeller Center, protecting the World Trade Center, protecting the Empire State Building. Those are the real powers in New York. And even though we stood strong and we stood tall on the foot soldiers of the New World Order, we got to work our way up that ladder to be more effective about putting the fear and then in the change on the people who are doing the damage to African people, not only here but worldwide. So we must keep our focus on the enemy of our children. I appreciate you, brother, anytime. And we must understand that we'll not let Giuliani absorb all this focus that we have for those who've struck against African people by making us think that somehow he has this power. Giuliani is Adolf Hitler at best, but I.G. Farben, they survived the war. Chase Manhattan Bank survived the war. Burlington and Covington, they survived the war. They played all sides. They were the makers of a Hitler, the makers of a Stalin, the makers of a Roosevelt, the makers of a Clinton. But truly it's those other people we will tend to refocus ourselves to make sure that they don't get the attention and the protection that they've received so far in the past. We've led a path straight to the enemy of our children's future. Right here, if you were to follow the tapes that we've done right here, just me, myself, I remember the first time I came here over at the Slave Theater. If you walk through that tape and watch that tape again, I don't know if it's back there on that table, but I would suggest that you spend a little time. I don't know who has the originals, Mr. Brown. If you could go back and pull up those old Coakley tapes that have been in a series. Seems like I'm here every October and every May for the last 4 or 5 years. You need to look back into those tapes, because in those tapes are very profound things about where we're really going with this thing. Everybody gets confused about what you're really after. Sometimes people think this is a demonstration in the public about media or press attention. The fear on the people's lives who are involved in these things. As fast as I got home, I got a notice from the IRS. Say I owe $4,500 worth of taxes from 1987. What year is this? Okay. So we're going to pay a price. Here it is here. It's the notice I had waiting on my door when I got home from New York. We'll pay a price. We'll pay a price for making the move, but it isn't any price we wouldn't pay to protect our children. And I say this, go back through those tapes and follow the Trilateral Commission and the centralization of world power. Follow the names that we listed of the people who are on the board of directors of the Council on Foreign Relations and those people who give the key donators to the Council on Foreign Relations. Go back and look at the tape we did on Skull and Bones, the Boule, the Masons, the Rhodes Rothschild Secret Society, the Army Spy Project, the military intelligence spying on Martin King, the old Memphis commercial appeal story. Check the one we did, the hell up in Harlem, over at the Masonic Temple before we were thrown out of the Masonic Temple over there, where we were talking about how all of these forces we were fighting were all meeting up in Harlem. Khaled mentioned it earlier, the Disneys, the Time Warners, Little did we know when we were dealing with the Time Warner Turner conspiracy with the little funky lecture series that those same forces, Calvin Butts, 100 Black Men, Luther Gatlin, Coy LaSister, who set the plan up to take the vendors off 125th Street. Don't forget these names. Big Dick Parsons at Time Warner, who was head of the Empowerment Zone. We put the picture on the front page of the Daily Challenge. Coakley accuses a conspiracy to take over Harlem. It was Giuliani, Pataki, and Charlie Rangel. And they used Charlie Rangel's tired, fat ass to get control into Harlem. Then they turn around and accuse him of taking the money. Now you know who took over the Apollo, don't you? Time Warner. You know that? Time Warner run the Apollo now. They gave it up. Time Warner runs the Apollo right now. They put up the money for Percy Sutton and Charlie Rangel to get out of trouble. So Charlie Rangel runs his fat ass out here and attacks Khalid Muhammad like a wild dog, thinking it's going to get him out of trouble with the hunky. And the hunky turned right around and wouldn't even meet with his fat ass. Now this is only one of 13 black men in the history of the world ever to serve on the Trilateral Commission. Every chairman of the House Ways and Means has been on the Trilateral Commission. If the Democrats took over tomorrow, he'd fill the seat of Dan Rostenkowski, who was a Trilateral Commissioner who went to jail. Wilbur Mills was a Trilateral Commissioner, head of the House Ways and Means Committee. He went to jail. Come on, Charlie Rangel, you can take the committee over. Your destiny has been carved in stone. You will do what the hunkies did. Your fat ass will go to jail. And they'll make sure you won't go to jail till you get the spot. Just to run you in the public like a wild dog, letting you know. Wasn't that interesting? That all that booty biting them Negro politicians did for Giuliani, he turned right around and wouldn't even meet with their tired asses. And that should let Negroes know in the future, when the people turn their back on you, the hunky will use you till he needs you and throw you back to us. And when the hunky really don't like you, he gonna throw one of them files out here to the Coakleyites and others who will find out how much money they paid you to be the underminer of African people. Percy Sutton, you got a black radio station. You could awesomely change the direction of New York if you took a no-holds-barred on crime activity against African people. If you could only use the station, you could have got yourself out of trouble. For the hunkies don't fear it the way it's set up now. It's kind of hard to attack somebody with a media outlet who could fight back. You could ring the people around City Hall and free yourself of bad paperwork if you were in like that with the people. There was a time when you were, but the more money you made, the less interested you got. And things changed, you thought, for your way. I remember I came here one week, he had just gotten a contract to put all the telephones in South Africa. Telcom or Southcom or some old crazy sounding name acronym. Maybe that's where they took the money out of the Apollo and sent it down there, since they didn't have no phone company. You got to go buy you some stuff real quick. But these Negroes have thought for a long time that they could fake out on the African people and then do a dance and not pay a price. The not pay a price is the critical element here, because their behavior will change when they get punished for it. I was so proud of the little sister, and I forget this sister's name. She has excessively large eyes, and she was on a Sister Shanette. She did an excellent job. Okay, she on the December 12th committee. She did an excellent job. She did an excellent job on a TV show that had Bill Perkins on it, had the brother from the 100 Loyal Black Policemen. I forget the name of his group, but he was a brother policeman who was pro-brothers, and Bill Perkins. And when they asked Perkins, what did he think about the march? And he said it wasn't successful, it was awful. And the sister said, well, you know, not only was it good, but you Negro politicians are going to pay a price for the undermining that you transacted against the people. It was very critical that she stood him up on the air and let white people know that these niggas is in trouble with us. Because that'll make the white man go get some new niggas. You'll be seeing them pop up. Some of them might have snuck through the stage trying to set themselves up for political empowerment. I saw some people sneak up on the stage of the Million Youth March. Some people who undermined us every day till we got there. Showed up calling everybody's name, loving everybody, going out there on their own to set their own political adventure. There was something wrong when religious people descend into politics. We had a lecture here entitled one night, I entitled it, Bibles, Ballots, and Bullshit. And that was the lecture that we talked about the stealing of the election from Reverend Al Sharpton. Now, Reverend Al, no, understand what I'm saying. We said it already. It's in that tape. We're at the Victoria 5. I raised a question about being passive in the face of having an election stolen and then suggesting to African people to have another election. I got a problem with that. See, if you don't defend the one they stole, why would I get with you on another one? If you ain't gonna fight for the one you won, what I'm gonna get with you on another one for? Because all I'm interested in is if they steal it, will you take it back? There should have been no peace in New York until Al Sharpton was in that runoff. And of course, maybe he thought he would get a deal over with Pagonis up in the court. But the hunkies ain't playing that. So it would have been better if you just said, kick their ass where you caught them. Should have never let them go. They should have never gotten away from that. They should have never. And again, I don't vote. I've registered over 20,000 people. I received the Board of Directors of the Year award from Vice President Mondale and Ben Hooks. All the time I'm asking Mondale about the Trilateral Commission while I stand before the NAACP Freedom Fund dinner in Chicago. But never again will I walk in there and vote for anybody knowing that African people weren't prepared to protect Harold Washington. So here we got a situation where all over, I watched Joe Madison do this, who was in on the CIA drug thing with Maxine Waters and Dick Gregory, who's now on Radio 1 with Kathy Hughes in Washington. Soon as the march was over, you watched the underminers come out. Well, if them youth ain't down here in the Congress fighting against bills, then that march wasn't shit. See, they don't have any role. See, they all drive cars and don't question the role of gas. I mean, hell, your engine got to work, true. Your tires need to be on the car, true. But you need fuel to make it all go. So when you get consciousness, to see people on the stage in New York, some of which who wasn't doing good speaking, but if they just said black power, then you can hear all of that love back from the people, black power. And you can see them, at certain times you can see them fists going up. You know, we've talked about this Mandela version of black power. But when you look out over New York, touche, thank you, brother, touche. When you look out over New York, different of those films that are around, and you see those hands, oh, I mean, I remember when I lost that job. I remember when the hunky did this. I remember when you could see all that was inside of the people waiting to be released. And that brings us back to something that becomes even more important now. Who were the forces that tried to murder Khalid Muhammad in the first place? You see, it all becomes more apparent now because you might have not known it then, but look at it now. I got brothers. I brought about 50 brothers up to New York. And when we came home, we had a meeting. I didn't bring any of this tape. I'll bring it up next Wednesday. But we came back. We sat at the table and let the men talk about what it was like to be up here. And to hear what was inside of their system, what it felt like feeling that African people could make a stand if the appropriate circumstances and situations were sustained over long periods of time. We could see change. But a couple of the brothers ran when things broke out. One brother, he ran, and he turned to the tape and he said, I have to tell you, brothers, that when the fighting started behind the stage, I ran. He said, and I ran halfway down that block. And as I ran, I saw people throwing rocks and bricks and bottles back at the police, and I stopped and said, why am I running? He said, and I turned around and I came back. He said, I'm so glad I came back. But at first I ran. He said, inside of me was fear. I was afraid. But then when I ran back and I saw the people fighting, I got courage. He said, I know myself better now. That's excessively important, that people have experience in being challenged when it could go all the way. Yeah, very much. I was just in Detroit this weekend. I have a newsletter for you, Brother Collard, from Brother Millard of Detroit. I don't want to forget giving it to you. But I'll get to it. This is newsletter. I want to make sure you get it because I promised I would give you this copy. Million Youth March, success. Khalid Muhammad draws the line in Harlem. Black youth get the truth. And the brother gave a very powerful insight to what it was like being there. Brother Millard spoke maybe 2 or 3 people before Brother Khalid. He was there from Detroit. And he was gave a very powerful breakdown for the people there in Detroit. And it's excerpts of this I want to let you know about when we get to that period. But all around the country, people have very proudly gone back to where they live and tried to communicate to the people that weren't there that was something a little different about this than they felt when they went to the Million Man March. Doesn't mean it was better or worse, but it does mean that they felt that they were a little bit more attuned to the focus of fighting against an enemy. I remember I left the Million Man March, I was slightly confused. I was confused about the concept of atonement. But then if you see that base theory on evil tape, we translated the concept of atonement. It dealt with the sacrifice of a goat. I felt that Khalid Muhammad was being sacrificed, offered up. But we lived to go through that, to translate what that meant, to be able to turn around and to say, you know, I remember same thing, I repeated, I said it on the stage of the Million Youth March when I talked to Khalid from the hospital. I said, what did God save you for? Why did God save your life, brother? I mean, you was right out there. We know that if you went out the back door, they had shooters all out the back door. They had cut the bushes, just like Martin King. They had bushes. They had a fence. They had a getaway car. They had cut through the fence. They had cut through the bushes. They were all ready for a whole change, to cut down the militants, to keep the moderates on the point, to pick up the people when you need them because there was no direct opposition. Nobody wants to talk back to the white man. Everybody wants to believe that they can reason with this devil. So when people come who don't take this, the others get frightened and they begin to try to undermine what you do for fear of what they'll be forced to do in a new black community. Where's Charlie Hamilton at now? Where is Charles Hamilton at now, Brother Collard? See, Charles Hamilton co-wrote the book with Kwame Ture, Black Power. But then he went right off into the Rockefeller Foundation and confused the concept that black power was somehow a good job you get. Kwame Ture has had to live his struggle. Charles Hamilton wrote, brother, you need to come back and rewrite the book, Black Power. It is very important now that the concept, we had the privilege last week to have Brother Collard at Roots Activity Center in Washington, where my child, Sister Maat, many of you all know my daughter, is a student, 6 years old. To see the little African children come together and all holler Black Power, to play the drums for their African hero. Very, very important. It's important now that you get Collard to the places where our children are. to make contact with the brother and say, would you come and touch our children? Because our children need in them to fight back authority.